There was a time when Nigeria had its own airline. Not just any airline, a national carrier. A flying symbol of pride, ambition, independence, and possibility. It carried Nigerians across cities, across Africa, across Europe, and across the world. For many people, seeing the green and white colors of Nigeria Airways on an aircraft was more than just seeing a plane. It was seeing Nigeria in the sky. But by 2003, that dream had collapsed. The aircraft were grounded. The routes disappeared. The passengers moved on. The workers were left frustrated. And one of Africa's most recognizable national airlines became a memory. So, what happened? How did Nigeria Airways rise from the ashes of a colonial-era airline to become a symbol of national pride? And how did that same airline fall into debt, mismanagement, political interference, and eventual liquidation? This is the story of Nigeria Airways, a story of ambition, a story of national pride, and a story of how a country can lose one of its strongest symbols when vision is not protected by discipline. Before Nigeria Airways, there was the West African Airways Corporation, popularly known as WWAAC. WAAC was created in 1946 to serve Britain's West African colonies, including Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia. At the time, air travel was not as common as it is today. Flying was expensive, it was prestigious, and it was largely controlled by colonial interests. WAAC connected major West African cities and gave the region an early taste of commercial aviation. It operated from Lagos and served routes that connected people, trade, administration, and movement across British West Africa. But as the late 1950s approached, the political landscape began to change. Ghana became independent in 1957. Nigeria was moving closer to independence. Other West African territories were also preparing for self-government. And with independence came a new question. Should newly independent African countries continue sharing one colonial-era airline, or should each country have its own national carrier? For Nigeria, the answer was clear. Nigeria needed its own airline, not just for transportation, but for identity, for prestige, for diplomacy, for economic power, and for the image of a modern nation ready to take its place in the world. When WAAC was dissolved in 1958, Nigeria inherited part of that aviation legacy and moved forward with what became WAAC Nigeria, which later became Nigeria Airways. Nigeria Airways was founded in August 1958 after the dissolution of the West African Airways Corporation. Nigeria Airways began life in 1958 as WAAC Nigeria. At the beginning, it was not fully owned by Nigeria alone. The Nigerian government held the majority share, while British interests, including BOAC and Elder Dempster, still held stakes in the company. But the direction was already clear. This airline was going to become Nigerian. By 1961, shortly after independence, the Nigerian government had taken full ownership. The airline became a true flag carrier, representing the new nation in the air. For a young country, this mattered. Nigeria had just gained independence in 1960. The country was trying to define itself. It had political leaders with big dreams. It had regional economies full of potential. It had cities like Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, Ibadan, Kaduna, Enugu, and Benin growing in importance. And it had people who needed to move: businessmen, civil servants, students, diplomats, pilgrims, traders, families. Nigeria Airways entered this moment as a bridge. It connected Nigeria internally. It connected Nigeria to West Africa, and it connected Nigeria to the rest of the world. In 1971, the airline was officially rebranded as Nigeria Airways. The name became simpler, stronger, and more direct. Nigeria Airways was no longer just a company, it was now a national symbol. By the 1970s and early 1980s, Nigeria Airways had grown into one of West Africa's most important airlines. It operated domestic routes, it flew regional routes, and it connected Nigeria to international destinations. At different points in its history, the airline operated aircraft such as the Boeing 707, Boeing 737, Boeing 747, McDonnell Douglas DC-10, Airbus A310, Fokker F-27, Fokker F-28, and Vickers C-10. To the average Nigerian, these aircraft were not just machines, they were symbols of progress. A Nigeria Airways ticket meant movement, it meant status, it meant opportunity. For some, it meant their first trip abroad. For others, it meant the Hajj pilgrimage. For business people, it meant trade. For students, it meant education. For government officials, it meant diplomacy. And for Nigerians in the diaspora, it meant connection to home. Imagine arriving at an airport in London, Rome, Frankfurt, or New York and seeing the name Nigeria Airways on the departure board. That name carried weight. It told the world that Nigeria was present, Nigeria was connected, Nigeria had arrived. At its peak, Nigeria Airways reportedly had around 30 aircraft and served routes across Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and North America. This was the era when the airline became known as Flying Elephant because of its logo. The elephant represented strength, stability, pride, power, and ambition. In many ways, the story of Nigeria Airways mirrored the story Nigeria wanted to tell about itself. A big country, a promising country, a country with the resources, population, and confidence to compete with the world. But behind the pride, cracks were beginning to appear. The problem with national symbols is that they can hide reality. From the outside, Nigeria Airways looked like a powerful national carrier. But inside, the airline was beginning to struggle. Running an airline is one of the most expensive businesses in the world. Aircraft must be maintained, pilots must be trained, engineers must be paid, fuel must be bought, international safety standards must be met, routes must be profitable, and management must be professional. An airline cannot survive on pride alone. It needs discipline, it needs commercial thinking, it needs financial control, and it needs freedom from political interference. But Nigeria Airways gradually became weighed down by problems that affected many government-owned companies in Nigeria. Overstaffing, poor accountability, political appointments, weak commercial discipline, maintenance challenges, debt, and decisions that were not always based on business sense. Aviation experts have linked the collapse of Nigeria Airways to political interference, poor economic management, bureaucratic corruption, chronic underfunding, overstaffing, and failure to properly restructure the airline before liquidation. This is where the dream started to weaken, because an airline is not just about planes. An airline is about systems. If the system is weak, the aircraft may still fly for a while, but eventually the weakness catches up, and for Nigeria Airways it did. One of the biggest criticisms of Nigeria Airways was that it became too exposed to politics. A national airline is supposed to serve the country. but it must still operate like a serious business. It cannot become a place where every government official wants influence. It cannot become a reward system for political loyalty. It cannot become an employment dumping ground. It cannot fly routes simply because someone powerful wants it. It cannot allow free tickets, inflated contracts, or poor financial control to become normal. When this happens, the airline stops being a business. It becomes a burden. According to aviation experts quoted by The Guardian Nigeria in 2026, Nigeria Airways was treated more like a political tool than a profit-driven business. They argued that unlike countries that restructured and commercialized their national airlines before privatization, Nigeria allowed its airline to deteriorate under political control and underfunding. This is an important point. Nigeria Airways did not collapse simply because Nigeria owned it. Many countries have had successful national or former national carriers. British Airways was once state-owned. Lufthansa also had strong government involvement. Ethiopian Airlines is still state-owned and remains one of Africa's strongest airlines. So government ownership alone was not the problem. The problem was governance. How was the airline managed? Who made decisions? Were appointments based on competence? Were finances transparent? Were aircraft maintained properly? Were routes commercially sensible? Were workers productive? Were debts controlled? These were the questions Nigeria Airways struggled to answer, and as the years went by, the answers became more painful. By the 1990s, the decline of Nigeria Airways was no longer hidden. Passengers complained of delays, flights were cancelled, aircraft became fewer, service quality dropped, debts increased, and the airline's reputation suffered. A company that once carried national pride was now struggling to keep itself in the air. Business Day reported allegations of deep corruption, asset stripping, and stolen funds in the airline's final years, including claims linked to official investigations and former staff accounts. The report also described the airline as once being one of the biggest carriers in West Africa before its collapse. By the early 2000s, the situation had become critical. The airline's fleet had shrunk badly. Its market share had collapsed. Its debts had become overwhelming. Historical Nigeria reports that by the early 2000s, Nigeria Airways owed about $528 million, had very few operational aircraft left, and was losing both domestic and international relevance. This was a painful fall, from around 30 aircraft in its stronger years to a struggling airline with barely any serviceable aircraft left. From international ambition to domestic survival, from national pride to national embarrassment. For the workers, the decline was personal. Many had given years of service to the airline: pilots, engineers, cabin crew, administrative staff, ground handlers, ticketing officers. For them, Nigeria Airways was not just a symbol, it was their livelihood. But when an institution collapses, it is often the ordinary workers who suffer the most. In 2003, the Nigerian government decided it would no longer continue pouring money into Nigeria Airways. The airline had become too weak, too indebted, too damaged, too difficult to rescue in its existing form, and so Nigeria Airways ceased operations in 2003. It was later liquidated. A national carrier that had flown for decades was brought to an end. For many Nigerians, it felt like more than the death of an airline. It felt like the death of a dream. Nigeria had lost its national carrier. The green and white aircraft disappeared from the skies. The flying elephant was grounded. The routes were gone. The brand was gone. And the question remained, how did we allow this to happen? After the collapse, there were attempts to fill the gap. Virgin Nigeria was later established as a replacement effort through a partnership involving the Nigerian government and Virgin Atlantic, but it did not fully restore what Nigeria Airways had once represented. Since then, Nigeria has continued to debate whether it needs a national carrier. Different governments have tried. Different names have been proposed. Different plans have been announced. But the shadow of Nigeria Airways still hangs over every conversation because Nigerians remember what happened, and many ask, if we could not protect the old one, what will be different next time? The story of Nigeria Airways is not just about aviation. It is about institutions. It is about leadership. It is about national pride. And it is about the danger of confusing symbolism with structure. A country can have a beautiful logo, a powerful name, a national color, a proud history. But if the institution behind it is weak, the symbol will eventually collapse. Nigeria Airways teaches us that national assets must be protected from political abuse. They must be run by competent people. They must have transparent finances. They must be commercially disciplined. They must be allowed to make professional decisions. And they must not become dumping grounds for patronage. The airline also teaches us that nostalgia is not enough. Yes, Nigeria Airways was once a source of pride. Yes, many Nigerians still remember it with emotion. Yes, it represented a powerful era of national ambition. But if Nigeria ever wants a successful national carrier again, it must build one on governance, not sentiment. On discipline, not slogans. On competence, not politics. On systems, not national pride alone. Because aircraft do not fly on emotion. They fly on maintenance, money, planning, safety, and trust. Nigeria Airways was once Nigeria in the sky. It carried our flag, it carried our people, it carried our ambition, but in the end it also carried the weight of our national weaknesses, mismanagement, politics, corruption, debt, and poor planning. Its rise showed what Nigeria could become. Its fall showed what happens when institutions are not protected. And maybe that is why the story still matters today. Because Nigeria Airways was not just an airline. It was a warning. And perhaps one day, if the right lessons are learned, Nigeria may fly again. But this time, not just with pride, with discipline, with structure, and with purpose. If you remember Nigeria Airways, share your memory in the comments. Did you ever fly with them? Did someone in your family work there? And do you think Nigeria needs another national carrier today? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Nigerian Encyclopedia for more stories from Nigeria's past.